Hello, and welcome to episode 6 of Into the Spotlight. I'm Morley.
And I'm Ryan, and on this episode, we're doing things a little bit differently this week.
It's just the two of us. It's throwback to episode 0.
Going back to our roots.
Yeah, and which is I'm excited for because we've had some amazing guests, and I've like right off the bat, I'm so excited with the conversations we've had. But I feel like I haven't had a lot of chance to just like catch up with you and see how you're doing. So, how are you doing? You're back in Gaspa now. You left Toronto, and how's that been?
It's been nice actually. I was on my own for about 5 months when the pandemic began, and it was different. I was working from home, thankfully, but eventually I was kind of like after the end of May, I was thinking, okay, this is kind of boring. And I
Yeah.
was finding all new different ways to just try different projects to work on, like this podcast. Finally got up and going, which has been a great way to pass the time and work on something that I'm passionate about, being able to learn from all different types of people. So yeah, no, it's been a crazy crazy ride the last few months, but I'm happy to be back. I'm happy to see some old friends and family that I haven't seen
Yeah.
in so long. And it feels nice to kind of like one thing I know since I've been back, I've been kind of revisiting the things that first inspired me all so many years ago and remembering why I was inspired by them and also learning about.
And yeah, I'm sure being home brings back a lot of memories and like allows you to kind of like refocus a little bit.
It does. It really does. And I feel very much so. I was also feeling that before I left Toronto, but especially now, like I've had so much time to reflect in a positive way, being able, like I mentioned, to rediscover things that inspired me, even going back to when I was a kid and seeing them in a new light and understanding why inspired me and why I want to keep on this path that I am on this creative path and just being able to learn and grow from that and being able to take all of that and keep moving forward.
Nice. Yeah, I always like so I grew up like in a pretty suburban community. And then I went to school in Montreal, which is like a relatively busy city. It's not the biggest city in North America, but
It's a
I always
city.
found yeah, it's a city for sure. I always found coming home, I'd be amazed. Like I'd get to the bus stop and walk out like, "Oh my gosh, it's so quiet." And you
Mm,
never even realize all this background noise that you just become accustomed to. So I'm
yeah.
actually really, I actually found out that I will be able to go visit my family in about a month,
Oh, that's
or
great.
a
I'm so
little
happy
under,
to hear
actually
that.
only 3 weeks. So I'm kind of excited to get that a little bit. Like we've been able to go camping the last few weeks. We're planning on going to a cottage in a little while, but it's nice. Good, very excited to see family and
No, well, for sure, especially in times like this where we're also distanced and isolated in so many cases. I'm glad you're gonna have that chance to be able to go home and just it's refreshing. It really is. That's one thing I'm
yeah.
happy about being here. It's like you mentioned about when you go back home, it's you appreciate the quiet. We were in Toronto. Toronto's not necessarily quiet at night.
Yeah, especially we both lived on busy streets too.
Oh yeah, like near Queen Street East, yeah, just like all the honking and horns and everything else, and the
I
motorcycles
am
at
really
3 a.m.
yeah. During the winter, our we didn't have control of our heat, and it got really hot, so we would regularly have to sleep with the windows open
In the
in the
winter.
winter. It was
Ooh,
basically we'd have to make the decision of do we want to be able to have a comfortable temperature or have quiet? You can't have both.
yeah.
So yeah, lots of not great sleeping nights listening to the streetcars outside. That was also the same time when I was like trying to figure out if I wanted to stay in my job or quit my job. So was not sleeping very well at that time, but
No,
very
no,
thankfully
very
now,
stressful.
yeah, they're very thankful now that our climate control is all figured out, and at least spending so much time at home, I'm happy that it's comfortable here. Like I don't think if I think if it was during the pandemic and our AC and heat wasn't working, I would be going a little crazy.
It'd be a total nightmare, and I
Yeah.
understand that totally. One thing I'm happy is that, like, when everything started shutting down, I started working from home as, like, so many others, where it's just because I spent a lot of time commuting on my way to work. And now, since like the months since I've been able to be at home, it's allowed me to finally be creative again in a way. Because like there's a time when I finished university, when I was finished at Ryerson after the documentary that I made with you, like there was a big quick leap from okay, it's school's over, move to new place, go on the job hunt, get job, and then I was commuting a lot. So I lost a lot of creative time that never really happened before. So like when the shutdowns began in mid-March, it was really like, "Oh, wow, I don't have to run anywhere." There's really
Yeah.
no excuse anymore. I can finally get back because the ideas don't stop. There are many days where I came up with an idea for, like, a short film that I wanted to make for a long time or a documentary or screenplay, and it's like, "Oh, that's great." Then I look around like, "Oh, no, wait, I'm on the bus, and I have 45 more minutes to go before I get to work." So it's
Yeah.
not like you just go at it and start it right away, so that's nice being able to just get back to basics and being
Hmm.
able to really sort and formulate all of my ideas and projects I want to work on and
Do
just
you find though that like without having that commute time, you like be spending so much time at home during the pandemic, you're not really able, you don't have as much of that like free form thought time where like you're just like sitting in traffic. You're like, oh, like that's a cool idea. I really want to write that down when I get home.
right.
Or do you
If
feel like you were still able to get that while spending so much time at home?
Oh, it doesn't stop. It just happens all the time.
Okay,
Like,
that's good.
it's not always necessarily from something I see because 'cause I'm just thinking about things all the time, just something that either interests me or something I saw on the news or anything like that. Like, it doesn't have to be something that's I see directly in front of me. That does happen sometimes, but a lot of times, like, I was thankfully to be right close to, like, Ontario where I was staying during the pandemic, and I used to go for walks and runs on the boardwalk almost every day. And
So
sometimes I
nice.
just sit, I'll be reading something, I'd be looking at the ocean, and I grew up by the ocean, so that brings back all kinds of childhood memories, right? And yeah, like they would just come to me like that because I just think about them all the time, and sometimes I could watch a show or a film or listen to an album the night before, and that's still sticking with me as I'm out on the walk, and I just see how it all comes together, and it just happens like that. Then I run home as quick as I can and write it down before I can forget it.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I have this like irrational fear that I'm going to forget a good idea. And I'm like, "Oh my god, I need to write it down right now." I don't know if I've actually ever forgotten a good idea, but I'm always scared that I'm going to.
I always do because unless like if it's something I think of and I don't think about for a long time afterward, I will forget it. Especially if it's something like minor. For example, like say like sometimes I have an idea for like how a scene ends or how a music should play in a scene or what type of music should be playing in a scene and I write that down right away because I'm not sure what context I might use that in the greater whole, but I know that will be useful somewhere down the line.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think as I've gotten more experience and done more projects, like it used to be that like if I got a good idea, that would be my next project.
Yeah.
But now I have so many things, ideas and projects built up and things that I want to do that I might get a good idea and not be able to execute on it for like 6 months or a year or
Yeah.
whenever. So you at a certain point you need to keep track of it. And like just I finished a big project this week that I've been working on for a while. And I
Hmm.
always feel a little strange after I finish a project because I tend to kind of get tunnel vision and don't have a plan to usually I feel like I used to be better, but recently I haven't been had something lined up exactly next to work on. So there's a bit of empty space. So I took like just some time to flip through my sketchbooks and look at old ideas that I was really excited about at the time. But I honestly you just forget about when you're in the throes of life and just working on other stuff. And I was like, okay, that's it. I'm definitely going to make that soon because now I have the time and it's the right situation.
And you just realize it's time to pursue this idea. And that's what
Mhm.
happens for a lot of my ideas too, is that like I write them down like here, I'll show you. Like I have like three like notebooks like these filled to the rim with like different random ideas from anything I've seen or any sort of inspiration. But like one thing it's nice is that like once you have an idea for something, like the idea continues to build and form in your mind, especially over time. You start adding layers to it. You start seeing, exploring it in different ways and how you could go about it. And then, like you mentioned, once it's time to pursue it, that's when it's time to go with it. That's what happened with the documentary that we made about content creators.
Mhm.
You know, that's like it was something that was building up in my mind for almost 2 years beforehand because I was watching all different types of YouTubers, vloggers, makers, you know, comedians, artists, gamers, anything like that. So eventually, like once it all comes together and you have an opportunity to go for it, it just feels like I find once you make a project, it's at the right time.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like even if you're really excited about an idea in the moment, and this is getting a little abstract, but it's You're right. Like you kind of know when it's the right time to do it. And for me, like with so much of my work is very physical, I'm like, oh, okay, now I have the 3D printer. Now I have
Mhm.
these materials, and I kind of have figured out how to make it. Like there's a literal block that I have to overcome. So maybe it's a little simpler for making physical things when it's like, okay, now's the time to do that.
Yeah, well, exactly, and, like but I think it's for all things, whether it's, like, an actual physical project or if it's some sort of art piece or short film, no matter what it is, like, the documentary that I'm working and doing prep work and all the pre-production for right now, like, this is an idea I had almost 3 years ago.
Hmm.
Like, it wasn't a fully formulated idea, that's not how they begin, I'm sure as you know, but it's an idea, it's just like, "Oh, I would love to pursue that." How I'm gonna pursue it practically, I'm not sure yet, or how I would do it or present it, that didn't occur to me right away, but it's still in my mind, it's been molding all and transforming and building all these years that now I have a clear picture of what I wanna do, how I wanna pursue it, how to pursue it, how I want it to look. And yeah, that's the next big one that I'm working on, and I can't wait to get started on it. Which, there's some COVID related challenges at the moment, but hopefully I can get the cameras rolling by maybe next year.
Sweet. Is it something that you'd have to bring some other people in on?
Well, I think so, yes, because it involves interviewing different types of people, and it's also something that I learned from making my documentary at Ryerson for my master's thesis last year was you can't do this on your own. Not again.
Yeah.
Not because
Yeah.
like
So
I
you were
had
saying last time, like film production is really a team sport.
It is always a team sport, and, like, I didn't do it all on my own, I had some great help from a few friends who were able like you saw when we filmed your interview, and a couple of other instances when I had that, which I'm
Yeah, you need someone to
eternally
shut up people in the hallway that are talking too loud when you're trying to do your interview.
so rude. Those young generations, they just don't understand.
Hey man, I know this is all of our common space, but this is mine right now.
Exactly, exactly. Anyway, we got away with it, and it turned out wonderful, so that's one
Exactly.
thing I'm happy about it, but exactly like you said, like, you need help, and that's one thing I almost came very close not maybe burnout per se, but almost making putting too much weight on my shoulders to the point where it could have collapsed. Like it was difficult trying to make that documentary because you're balancing all your class and schoolwork and your assignments along with making this documentary and trying to do it in a way that's very practical because your thesis, right? So it's really trying to do that and trying to do all the pre-production, like doing the producing, the writing, the research, the directing, the editing, and on top of a 30 some page research paper, that's a lot. That's quite a lot to do in a
Yeah.
few months' time. So now, and besides, I want people to work with to help maybe handle the camera work, maybe do some of the lighting, the audio recording, have a producing partner to help me kind of organize everything because that's a big part of it too is getting these productions off the ground.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's more so having that now because if you don't have that, like I was running around with like, you know, 80 pounds of camera equipment on my back. you
Literal
know,
weight on your shoulders.
literally that. So I mean, I appreciate the experience. It was a hell of a ride and I will always remember it and cherish it. But I know now for next time if to do this in the way that I want, it's to help you need the help of those others. And there's a few people here that I know that can help me with that I'm gonna reach out to very soon once I have all the pre-production all figured out that I'm just gonna
Cool.
go pursue it. And I want to work with great people. I want to work with people who are great with a camera. Who have a talent for people skills, organizing with others, scheduling things. Like I want to work with great people like that. Anyway, being able to have more of a crew and uh, just finding finding my way in that leadership role as well.
Yeah, like I see what you're saying that even if you could do it all on your own, you want to do it with other people because you're going to get a better end product out of it.
Exactly,
It's going
and
to make
like
everything better.
and yeah, and like not to put too much stress on it. And it's almost impossible, really, to do everything on your own
Hmm.
because the weight of it would just crush you. So, that's
Yeah,
one thing I learned. Like I didn't come like too close to that, but I could feel that. Okay, next time if I want to do something that's a big feature length documentary or whatever project I make, then yeah, you need that support. It's important.
for
So
sure.
that's one thing I understand now. But like it's not the same for
Yeah.
like say a short film. A short film I can do that over a period of a couple of days and I can do all the other stuff because it's just a few days shoot. It's not something that's too stressful in that regard.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, just speaking of support structures, I feel like during the pandemic, what's been super helpful for me is I've been doing these weekly Zoom calls with
Mhm.
other makers around the world, which is kind of funny because like we could have been doing this before the pandemic.
Yeah.
This is a great community, and I think lots of the interaction happens through like Instagram comments and collaborative projects and things.
Yeah, yeah.
But and maybe this is just for me. Like I know lots of people have their sort of little groups within the community, but I feel like I hadn't really found my group yet. And I was
Really?
really, yeah, like I had people in the maker community that I felt like I connected with, that like, or people that I really looked up to. But I mean, there's a difference between that and having like close friends that you feel like you can have like regular conversations with. Um, so like I was involved in some like kind of during the beginning of the pandemic when people would be like, oh, let's do like Zoom calls with all these different groups of people. Someone set up a makers having beers one, and I was like, I love this. I want to do this all the time. So I
Yeah,
kind of like asked for the guy who set it up his blessing to kind of like make it a weekly thing. And I think a ton of people were feeling that way in the community. And now it's become just like such a great group of friends. We like talk every day. And
that's wonderful. Because like John Kipoff that we interviewed a few episodes ago, he was part of that too, right?
yeah,
That's how you
yeah,
guys
for
met?
sure. And it's like working at the set shop has been great, like pre-pandemic, and I should be going back this
Mhm.
fall.
Awesome.
And being able to like develop in-person relationships with makers and carpenters and woodworkers. But I mean, you're still in a very specific niche. You're in people building scenery, but the maker community as a whole is like so broad. I mean, there you can do 3D printing, digital fabrication, leatherworking, woodworking, model making. Most people are doing a bunch of different stuff. Um, so it's not like everyone who's working with their hands is that much of a generalist. And also there's the whole like making YouTube videos about it side of things. So
Right, right.
it's been really amazing for me getting that group of people. Um, and I think for like a lot of us in the group, it's been like really vital for our mental health just to have those like regular good conversations with people. Like I've also been doing like weekly Zoom chats with my good friends from home, and I found that like I really need those.
Oh
Um,
yeah, they're essential, and I was doing that too. Like, there's one of our mutual friends, Emil. Like, we were having like watch parties, watching like the Avengers movies together. You know, like
oh,
old
I
times.
did one of those. I did one Netflix watch party, and it was so fun.
Oh, it's wonderful. I
Yeah, but I
mean,
haven't done
but
one since.
but it's necessary, like you said, because the whole theme of this episode is about how COVID has impacted creatives and creative types across the spectrum, and just how it's led to new challenges, but also in some ways new opportunities for us to create, to
Yeah.
interact, to get inspiration, how we're going to go about pursuing our projects for who knows how long. It's difficult for everyone in that regard.
Well, so like the strange and slightly counterintuitive thing is that I feel like if I look just at my creativity, it's created more opportunities than challenges. In my
Mm.
life as a whole, it's created tons of challenges. um, but I feel like I've been able to be so prolific during this time because I mean, after quitting my job in the fall, I'm kind of on this path of like figuring out there's like many different avenues I could go down, and I'm like kind of actively figuring it out. But if employers aren't hiring, it kind of gave me a little bit of permission to be like, okay, I'm only going to focus on my own stuff. That's all I can do right now. I'll make money how I can. I'll deliver food on my bike and do commission work, which plays into all my own work and everything else.
Mm.
Um, and it allowed me to kind of give permission to myself to pursue all these projects. Um, that being said, the other great thing about well, one of the great things about not having pandemic life is you have all those social interactions that I feel like really feed into my creativity. So just like going to bars with friends, um, sometimes it's just the positivity and just random ideas that come out of that are so valuable. So I found I've been in my head a lot, which has been really good because I've been able to like really ideate and zero in on stuff. But being in your head a lot also breeds anxiety, right? So it's like
It's a catch-22 for sure.
yeah, I've definitely had to be like super intentional um just about what I'm doing and how it's like affecting my mental state. And that's been great thing with living with Eden is that we kind of like are always checking out for the other person, that they're like, "You good? Like, what do you need?
Yeah, you get.
do we
Yeah,
need do,
no.
do we need to like do something fun tonight?"
Yeah,
So, definitely grateful for her.
yeah. Well, that's it. I'm glad you guys are able to keep each other in balance that way. But you're absolutely right. Like, it's almost like, it's good in the sense that it's allowed me, like I was mentioning before, to just confront so many ideas I've had before, just trying to, okay, really focus in on them, break them down, understand what it is I want to do, how to practically do some of these things. Like, I've written a whole story draft for a short film that I want to do very soon that I can do here in my hometown,
Oh, cool.
which is nice. But now it's like, okay, now the practical part's like, okay, COVID's an issue, finding an actor, but like I think I figured out a way where it's only requires one actor, and it's mostly going to be relying on like visual and sound effects. So I think I found a way to pursue it now in a way that can work without having to have all different types of people and not have paranoia over the virus. But
Yeah.
it's nice being able to. That's one thing I miss, like you said, is that trying to find meeting up with people, hanging out, socializing, interacting, because that's a big part of the inspiration comes from as well. Even
Yeah.
if it's not from, even whether it's with fellow creatives or filmmakers or even just friends, like you observe certain situations or someone mentions something and it kind of sticks with you in some way. At least when it
Mhm.
comes to me, like it adds another layer to maybe something that I'm working on that I didn't think of beforehand that I can now maybe try pursue in that angle. I think that's one thing I miss. It may sound very abstract, but that's how some of it happens. Like I'm very observant of people in all different types of situations. I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, how it's so lucky that this happened during a time when the weather is nice because
Right.
I feel like to a certain extent, I still feel like I've been able to go outside and at least be around other people, even though you're all 6 feet apart.
But
And
but it's like that physical presence of seeing. It's not like at the very beginning when we're all really huddled inside. Like, I
yeah,
remember when this first began, and I would go out on the street because I needed some food, and all the cans of beans were gone, and I was miserable. No, I'm kidding. But it was eerie seeing, like, you must have noticed that too, that Toronto was really, like, empty for the first few weeks.
oh,
Like, there's
so strange.
no one on the streetcars or the buses, hardly anyone on the streets. It was really.
One of the strangest things for me is like I started doing the bike food delivery before the pandemic started, so like in February,
Mhm.
and then I've continued throughout as gradually like I started with a face covering because it was cold out, and I never lost the
Yep.
face covering because as it warmed up, then COVID started essentially.
Right.
Um, so I would be biking through Yonge and Dundas Square, which for the non-Torontonians is kind of like the Times Square of Toronto. It's usually there's screens everywhere. There's usually like street performers. It's very busy. Um, and in like April or May, when things were like really, people were like, "Oh my god, this is like an intense thing,"
Mhm.
and lockdown was happening, it would be empty, like totally empty. And
Oh,
you'd look
wow.
up at these screens and there'd still be some ads, but then there'd be these massive PSAs that were like, stay, it just would say like stay home with a simple graphic. And it felt like I was in a
Oh,
dystopian
yeah.
movie. It was
That's
so
very
spooky.
That's very 1984. That's holy.
Yeah.
That's
That's
incredible.
what it felt like. I mean, it's for good, right? Like it was keeping people safe, but I was like, oh, this is eerie.
I mean, it's just such a shift from even from a year ago. Because I remember when the Toronto Raptors, the basketball team, when they won the NBA championship, like I was there downtown with a few other friends just
Yeah.
celebrating. Everyone was a big crowd. And then now, less of a year later, it's shifted completely. I mean,
Mhm.
now things are starting to reopen. It's a bit more relaxed, but it's just, yeah, it's just a crazy shift that happened. It's hard to hard to understand it at times. Just
Yeah.
uh, just how things can change so quickly in so little time.
I mean, I feel very lucky that I like working from home and like
Oh, me too.
I feel like I have all the tools I need to be creative here. I have the tools. Like I was telling Eden this recently, like I'm so happy that I'm currently in a space where I feel like if I have an idea, I can execute on it. And
Mm,
that's not something I've always felt. Like when I was in Montreal, I was like working in my bedroom under my loft bed, cutting wood out on my balcony. And then when I'm home with my parents, like yes, they have more space and more tools, but it's not my workshop, so I don't feel comfortable.
mhm.
And now I'm still in an apartment, and I would love to have more space. I would love to have a fully equipped workshop, but I feel like I've really optimized it to a point where I can do all the things I want to do, and like it's like a blank canvas that I know I can use, which is really exciting. But I
That's
mean,
great to
Eden, for
hear.
example, is like she really is craving a workplace with other people.
Mm.
She doesn't have the personality type that would always be able to work from home, which
Yeah,
is good.
it depends, yeah, it just like, I'm kinda like you in that sense, like, I like being home, I like being able to just zero in, focus on my stuff, like, have a work environment that's suitable to me. Although the thing is, like, once I wanna make these things, I need people. I need to be out and organizing things and, you
Right.
know, taking the role of the general and directing the army, so to speak.
Yeah.
But, like, but, like, that will come in time. Eventually, things will relax to a point where you can get back and work with other people and stuff. Especially here in my hometown, I don't feel that won't be as big of a problem as if, say, I was in the city. So,
Mhm.
but I wanted to ask you about, like, how you've been able to, like, focus on all of your ideas and being able to continue your creative projects the way you've been able to do them, because since around November you've been on a steady pace of creating all different kinds of amazing, interesting, dynamic videos. And now since the pandemic's happened, like, you still kept that on. We started this podcast. So how is that, so when started things started shutting down, that interrupt your creative process, the way you're choosing different types of projects? Because now you've made like a video with like a 3D printer. You've been doing
Yeah.
all kinds. I just watched your recent video about the 3D printed light, which I thought was amazing. I liked how, like, you did the design like on screen using that software. What was it called? The software?
It's Fusion 360.
Yeah,
That's the software.
I liked how you were seeing the process of it designing. I love the title
Thank you.
cards and the music. It flowed so well. I was watching on the TV because I watch all your videos on the TV. I don't watch it on the phone. I just think
Oh, wow.
it's, oh yeah, no, it
I've
adds
never
it.
even watched my videos on the
It
TV.
they look really good. They look really good. I
That's good
watch
to
them
hear.
to relax. I'm just saying, oh, this is so great. But yeah,
Oh,
and
wow.
also I liked how you're doing the design and the software. I thought that's so John Kaipoff inspired. I love it.
Yeah. No, that I mean, that's a this is a tangent, but real quick, like, I was talking about this with some people yesterday. Like, I feel like watching other makers' videos who I look up to, it in some ways it gives you the confidence to try a technique. You're like, oh, they did this. It was engaging to try a video technique, but then also just to try a craft, and be like, it's not as complicated as I thought. Anyway, that's a whole nother topic
Yeah.
on its own. But yes,
Tune
that
in for
was
episode 7. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah. But yeah, like kind of like I alluded to earlier, I actually feel like the pandemic has made it easier to produce videos more consistently for me.
Mm,
Um, what I made for the viewers, I'm holding up my notebook cover that I carved a hand on the cover with like an
so cool.
eyeball. Thank
So
you.
cool.
So I was making this video once I started working at the set shop. And it took me so long to make the video because I had just started this new job and I was figuring out my pace of life. So I'd be like working on in the mornings before work and the evenings afterwards. And when you're working like an 8-hour workday, like you want some time to relax as well and
Mhm.
do other stuff. So now that I'm kind of viewing my own creative pursuits as my main gig, it's been easier to make videos and like try out different styles. Like me and Eden kind of were like, oh, it'd be fun to make some cooking videos. Let's try making some cooking videos. Which I don't think is something I ever would have done had I had another job altogether because it just would have been too much. It's like I
Yeah.
have other projects I want to make.
I know, I
But
know.
but the funny thing is those videos are actually like pretty quick to make, which is something I never would have known otherwise. It's not something I would have assumed by any means.
Yeah,
Um,
like sometimes, like, you're so busy, you don't have time to truly think about these types of other avenues, like the kitchen series, the cooking series you made. The what's it called? The Crowded Kitchen?
mhm.
I love the name. That's a perfect name for it.
I think that
But
was Eden.
that was in A plus to Eden.
Yes.
That's incredible, like, how, like, sometimes we can get so busy, like, we kinda put blinders on to some ideas that we could be open to,
Yeah.
because like, we just don't have time to think about them. Like,
Oh,
I
it's all
try
the
and
time. I feel like I always have blinders on, but I'm always like trying to take them off a little bit. I'm
right,
always trying to
right.
like just checking just to make sure. Um, if it's whether it be like I have some ideal in my mind of like what a thumbnail should like. Should I was talking about this on Clamp recently, the other podcast I do. I have some ideal in my head of what a thumbnail should look like, but I'm not taking a step back and think like, well, what is the function of a thumbnail? And this ideal I have in my head is taking me away from like what a YouTube thumbnail needs to do, which is get someone to watch the video.
Right, right, right.
Yeah. Um, yes, I kind of got away from your original question, but
What was my original question? No, it was I don't even know if I asked the question, but it was just about how, yeah, like, sometimes, like, the routine of life that we all got so used to pre-pandemic, sometimes it takes away from our creative pursuits that we can pursue, because we
yeah,
just don't have enough time to really think about them. And if we do think about them, like in my case, didn't have enough time to actually pursue them, organize them.
Yeah,
So
and I'm someone who I like having an unstructured schedule. And working from home has been one of the reasons it's been really nice is because I can have like three things going at once. I can take a break from working on a leatherworking project, say, and go
mhm.
do dishes or go hang out with the cat, which is really great for me. Like I like being able to switch gears a lot throughout the day. And I think that's one of the reasons, honestly, I've been able to be more prolific. It's not necessarily having more time, but just being able to spend my time in a space where I feel like I can be creative and execute effectively.
Yeah, and being productive and just feeling like I always want to feel satisfied by the end of the day, knowing that like okay, I worked and I advanced on this project. Whether it was like writing it, planning it out, storyboarding it, filming it, as long or editing it, as you know,
Yeah.
you
But
know.
it's interesting you say that because it's a being able to switch gears like I have been has been a double-edged sword because sometimes I realized this a few months ago. It's like if I jump around too much, I won't feel satisfied at the end of the day because since I'm jumping around so much, I feel I never feel settled in any one thing. So I might have rushed a process and not could have got a nice a result if I want.
Mm.
So it's been a balance to strike for sure.
And like for example, like what's an example of that? Like when it comes to like a certain project you make for one of your videos, or
Yeah. So let's say like I'm attaching two pieces of leather together and there's like a few ways I could be doing that.
mm,
But since let's say I'm also cooking at the same time and I'm like, oh, this thing needs to rest for 15 minutes. I'm going to take 15 minutes, go over to my leather crafting workbench and attach these two things. But since in my head there's like a time constraint there, I'm implicitly rushing for no reason at all other than I'm just trying to fit this in. And I'm like, oh dang it, like that's something I should have taken more time on.
yeah, that's one thing I learned very early on, especially when it comes to like videos and other types of media projects, is to never ever rush them, especially when it comes to filming, because then you rush a filming too quickly, you don't have enough coverage, maybe the angles or the eye lines don't make sense. Then you try editing that together and it's like, oh my gosh, what have I done?
Yeah.
So it's like
Every
one
time I
thing.
rush and I get a good result, it feels like I cheated. I'm like, I shouldn't have gotten that good result. That's luck.
Yeah, yeah, pure like skin of your teeth. That's why I always try to give each project the time that it needs to really breathe, even as you're editing it together, to make sure like it's not pieced too quickly, that it just has the right flow, the right tone. Even like as you're filming it, because I noticed when I was in university on certain student projects, like it's all about film this quickly so we can run and get to the next thing. Like, wait, we don't know if we've really done this scene justice. We have this great environment. Why not take advantage of it as we still do, instead of like rushing through it, running off, and then like, oh my god, we don't have this thing, or else it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So it's important to have that. I'm picturing you like you're like flipping something over like the stove and you're like painting the leather at the same time with the other arm.
Yeah, not quite that literal, but pretty close. And I mean, I need to work on my patience. That's what it comes down to. Sometimes I'm just an impatient person. Sometimes I can be super patient. It's
Really?
funny, but it's
I never got that sense from you, like impatience. Never.
yeah, I don't know. It's situational. Like if I'm feeling really excited about stuff, I can kind of lose impatience, which then the other side of that is like if I really get in a flow state, then impatience doesn't even exist. It's just like I'm just doing the thing and all the time I'm taking is great. But yeah, I'm trying to get better at like recognizing those situations so I can skirt them before they rear their ugly head.
Yeah. Well, we all have like all people have vices, and even creators do as well. And sometimes these can be hamper your process. It's just a matter of just recognizing them. Like I used to be like that too, like just not being thoughtful of all the possibilities, of what could happen if I do this, if I don't do this. So it's always a question of just recognizing this early on, knowing how to um, manage it and handle it in the best way possible.
Yeah. One thing you were talking about earlier before we hit record is just how you kind of alluded to this earlier, but how the pandemic has allowed you to reach a little more clarity.
Mm,
Did you want to speak about that a little bit? Because I think that's really interesting. Like, um,
yeah, absolutely. Can talk about this all day long. Oh yeah, well, it's like I mentioned it before. Like I went from finishing my masters to jumping into the job hunt and getting a job very quickly. So it was a quick turnaround, and like what I'm doing now is more in like communications, marketing, advertising, stuff that I learned to do during my undergrad, on top of like all the video and media stuff with that.
yeah,
So now and like I was commuting a lot for many hours every day, coming back home, and it's hard to once you get home after a long day to just focus on a project, right? Like you're tired, like especially when I'm doing creative stuff at work in a totally different context. It's hard to get the engine back up running to on your creative stuff, like on a Monday night, for example.
Yeah,
That's
I get that
switching
feeling sometimes.
gears.
Like a quick aside is sometimes yes. I just realized I was just going to say exactly what you just said, but I know that feeling. I'm not going to just reword it.
It's like switching gears, right? And sometimes it's hard to switch gears once you've been in one for pretty much the whole day long to kind of switch back, and you're just like, oh, I like you try, and then I look back at like a few days after, I'm just like, no, what was I thinking? What was I doing? This is not good. So you kind of rip off the page and throw it in the back of you, and then you have like the waste paper bin just full. I mean, not that literal, but it's just how it feels at times.
Yeah.
But yeah, but in regards to clarity, like I think almost every creative person, artist on the face of the planet has had more time to really revisit and think about what it is that they're doing, how they're making their art or their craft, and how they're able to pursue it. I think, especially people like us who are young and aspiring, who are just beginning their creative journeys, like it's offered a lot more clarity in regards to what what is it that I want? Like, what is it that I want to do, and what is it that I want to pursue? And how
Yeah,
I
and
want to pursue it in a way that's practical and that's in a way that I want to be successful at it, you know?
I think crises have a way of doing that always. I
Yeah.
think it makes you reevaluate like what's important and not what is easy or what's convenient. But you're like, life is short, and I can spend a lot of time sitting at home doing something I don't want to do. So let's
Yeah, well,
not do
that's
that.
it. And everyone deserves to do the things that make them happy, to do the
Mhm.
things that make them feel enthused and fulfilled and something that they're passionate about. Like you mentioned, life is short. Life is very short. I think this crisis, this terrible crisis, is making people realize that in a way that hasn't shocked us enough beforehand in some ways.
Yeah,
And so yeah, no, I'm just really thinking about because like I mentioned earlier, even even before we hit record about how I've been revisiting older types of like books and films and music, things that got me, interested in creating in the first place and what it is that I like about them. And also on top of discovering new types of artists and filmmakers and creators and how they're impacting me. So I'm able to see everything kind of like in totality now. Like I was been watching a lot of independent films from the 1990s since there was that really big independent wave of filmmakers who were the first time being able to get their own equipment and make films that are true and authentic to them.
yeah. Would that
Like
be
people
like
like
the Cohen brothers to a certain extent?
yeah, Coen Brothers, Quentin Tarantino's at the very top of that list, and then there's others like Kevin Smith, Richard Linklater, Steven Soderbergh started around this time. Even Christopher Nolan at the very tail end of the '90s. They all kind of started the same way because they were the first generation to get their hands on equipment that they couldn't get on before, and they were able to make things that are just so authentic and unique to them, and doing it in a way that's very practical and inexpensive. So I'm looking at that thinking, why aren't I doing that? Why aren't I doing that now? I'm like, wait, there's a global pandemic, so I have to wait maybe a tiny bit longer. But now it's like I want to do that. I want to be able to send my stuff out to festivals and work with amazing creative types.
Yeah,
Like I think a lot of times I was waiting too long on some opportunity that would just fall in my lap or that I will have to work for in order to get. Now I'm thinking that maybe like every filmmaker I ever looked up to just started their own things if they could. So why shouldn't I do that?
yeah. It's a good point.
And being able to tell stories that I know that are meaningful and personal to me and being able to express that the only way that you can. Kevin Smith talks a lot about this and just being, you know, it's easy to like, do things for what's, quote unquote popular or what's trendy or, it's like selling a piece of yourself just to do that. But what you have, and this applies to all creative types, even you as a maker or anyone else, a musician, anyone from any type of creative backgrounds, that all you can be is authentically you. All you can
Yeah,
be is yeah, that is your value to this world, is that you have a way of seeing the world that no one else can. and that's reflected in even like the projects that you've done, documentaries and short films that I've made that I want to even continue to make into the future. That's all we have is that, and being able to understand how valuable that is, and not chasing some small idea of what success is, but being able to express yourself in a way that feels true and right. And if it's personal and meaningful to you, then it will be meaningful for others.
Yeah, and that was something I feel like we touched on with Stacy and Sandra last week.
Hmm.
Is that like people like authenticity is so people crave it. Like they just they want to feel something. They want to feel the passion to come out of something. Like I feel that a lot. I get that a ton with music. Um,
Right.
in maybe a way that you get more with film. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I do get that a lot with music. Um, for example, like Bon Iver, um, is a very like interesting artist. He does some pretty like electronic experimental stuff, but I feel like I can really feel like the passion and all the layering and beauty that goes into it. Oh, sorry,
Right.
I'm not getting choked up. I just my words caught in my throat. um, and that's like the type of music I crave. I love like super evocative music that like if I put it in, it creates a scene in my head. And I think
Mm.
you really only get that with something that's authentic. Like no matter the genre, it's I like my good friend Pat. He doesn't like listening to Spotify playlists
Oh, is that
because
so?
he likes exploring an artist and like seeing all the what makes that artist tick and their ways of expressing themselves. But I'm more of a like feeling based music listener. Like I like curating playlists based on feelings.
Yeah.
And I used to have a good bit of like song ADD. Like I'd have a hard time listening to a song to the end because I'd be like, oh, this thing in the song reminds me of this other song. Like, wouldn't this be the perfect thing to hear right now?
Right. Right.
I've
Hitting
since gotten over,
hitting that skip button on repeat.
yeah. And so kind of like I was saying earlier with like jumping around projects is nice, but if you take it to the nth degree, it kind of gets in the way of the beauty of the thing itself.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, that authenticity and getting and being able to feel someone's passion through something is like it's like the most important thing in art.
Yeah, exactly. And even if it's like the most, even if it's not like widely released, whether it's like on a streaming platform for music or for whatever else, like as long as you're able to make something you can point at and be like, I made this, I'm proud of this. I think there's not enough of that in some ways, which is ironic because with the internet, people can collaborate and work on all different types of things, but and I think, like you mentioned, we crave authenticity because we see so many examples of things that maybe don't feel as authentic, kind of like
Yeah,
rising to the top. And like, like now there's a way where you can game algorithms to get a lot of views or likes or shares or
yeah,
what have you. And we see that a lot. Like there is a certain sort of mainstream on the internet, for example, even though the internet is not designed to be mainstream, it's designed to be
yeah,
this wide world of anything where anything's possible and anyone can see anything. So yeah, I think people are. I don't know. I don't know. It feels like just different from like watching things from like 30 years ago, or even 20 years ago, and seeing how it's so different compared to now.
yeah. Speaking to what you said about like ways of gaming the system, that's something I struggle with because you have to do it at a certain point. Like as someone who's making YouTube videos regularly, like you want people to watch them. Um,
Yeah.
and if no one watches them, then I'm not really achieving my goal because I want someone to see them and get inspired or learn something or gain the confidence to do it themselves or just get something out of it. But you have to play the game to a certain extent to get people to see it.
Oh,
And that's,
absolutely, for sure.
yeah. And it's something I don't like thinking about, but I need to think about. And I probably need to think about it a little more. It's like, oh, yeah, there are certain best practices that one should follow. And
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer in just like make great stuff and eventually like the rewards will follow,
Yeah.
which is true. But there's a lot of people making great stuff.
Yeah, and of course, like if you want to rise to the top, if that's your goal, then yes, you have to find some, you know, methods in order to do that. And that's something I explored in my idea and creators about, this idea of the YouTube algorithm. It's this ever changing, non visible sort of beast that
Yeah.
determines what goes up and what goes down. And
One of my favorite makers, Jimmy DiResta, he describes it as an old man in a basement with a bunch of leaky pipes, and he's just like turning different pipes for different people's channels, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna turn this pipe on." So he's like, "Oh yeah, the old man in the YouTube basement liked my video this week," because it's just so unpredictable. You like, so you think a video is gonna pop off and it does nothing. You're like, "Oh well, guess it wasn't in my favor."
oh my gosh, yes, you just have to hope you're in the right lane and whether that pipe turns in your
Yeah.
favor. But
Yeah,
it's
or just sorry, just one more thing to say on that, and just being prolific enough that eventually, um, you'll have created enough things that someone will find one thing and then be like, "Oh, I want to see the rest of this person's stuff."
yeah.
Like you have to be prolific. You have to try to make as much as you can, because the chances of making that one video that all the people you want to see will see it is very low. Sorry, but I
No,
interrupted you.
no,
Go
no,
ahead.
no, so I understand. You're the maker and the YouTuber, so I want to hear this from your perspective because yeah, because I know I talked about this with you in the documentary itself, and now about over a year later, like, do you still feel like you have to hit this weekly video? Like, do you like? Because I know sometimes, like, you saw this a lot with vloggers, like people like Casey Neistat, for example, where at one point they were making a vlog every single day. Like, and
Yeah,
that's hard to do. That's very hard to do to find something about your life that's super interesting, film it in a way that's interesting, edit it in a way, on the same day, release it that night. Do you find that's like, for example, in your case, do you think that like you have to hit that like do you think it's more important to make something that you feel that like a project that you're passionate about more so
yeah.
and that you feel that you're saying something rather than trying to just hit this um deadline all the time?
I 100% feel like I want to make great stuff, and if that doesn't fall on a schedule, then that's the thing that's going to be sacrificed. It's just not the top of my priority. Um, but that being said, it is something. It is a factor, right? Like you want to be putting out things regularly enough that
Hmm.
people feel like you are someone who's worth watching, and they kind of know you exist amidst all the noise. Um, but I've never really felt like I had to, or personally, like I wanted to submit myself to a specific schedule. There were times when like a video every week and a half or so. I don't know if I've ever done every week, maybe for a short amount of time, but never consistently. It kind of worked. But there's plenty of bigger stuff I want to do that will not work with making every single week. I could serialize it, but there's also something to be said for like one magnum opus. It's like you're going to see the whole thing in this one thing. You're gonna
Yeah,
have to wait a week. That's actually something I'm trying to figure out right now. I'm like, is this video I want to make? Should I serialize it or should I make it one magnum opus? Um, yeah,
it's
I don't.
hard. Sorry.
It's hard. Like it's exactly what I was saying before. It's like that balance of your own creative vision and like getting people to see your stuff. I feel like what I'm doing right now works pretty well in that like I get something out maybe like 2 or 3 times a month, maybe once a month, but it's fine. I don't need to get 100,000 subscribers in the next couple months. I'll be
Guys, if you're
okay.
listening, subscribe now.
Yeah. If you're not subscribed to Morley Kert, what are you doing?
But it's absolutely right. I think it's true because yeah, I'm trying to set myself on a certain deadline as well. Like the next documentary I want to make, I want to try to get that filmed and finished by middle of 2021. Because like another problem is that like I want to submit this to film festivals. Like film still works very old school. Like it's not recommended to put stuff up online until after it's been screened at a few places because festivals where
It's
you
really
go and you
interesting.
meet different types of people like producers, other types of creatives, and actually being there and being able to socialize and interact with other types of people who's like, oh, that was a great thing. I would love to work with you on X thing. And then that leads to who knows what that will lead to. So I don't know, that's another problem with this whole pandemic is that we don't really know what things will be like, say, in a year's time from now.
Yeah. And I'm a big fan of deadlines. I just that reading light video I put out was for a challenge. It was for a light fixture making challenge that the guys at Because We Make, which is a great maker podcast, shout out. They put it on, and I love doing stuff like that because it forces me to maybe try something I didn't do before, and the deadline really makes you show up.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a motivating factor. Like if I were just to work on something and just kind of like you said, have this never-ending ocean of open-endedness,
yeah,
then you don't get as much done. But if you have like a set deadline in your mind, that's what I do for my writing a lot, because if I don't, then the writing kind of, the process can be a bit all over the place, not as quick or as formulated as I want it to be. So it's always about, okay, by this time, this day, on Friday, I want to have X amount of pages written. And that's
Yeah.
something I always use as a motivating tool. Or I want to get through the next act of this screenplay or something.
Well, I think one of Da Vinci, like Leonardo da Vinci, one of his big problems was that he didn't have many deadlines. He had lots of open-ended projects that he never finished.
Oh,
And we
really?
probably wouldn't know as much as we do about Da Vinci if he hadn't kept very meticulous journals. If it weren't for that, like he might have been just another. I mean, his paintings were amazing, right? No one's arguing that. But
He's a not bad of an indie artist.
yeah, but he didn't make many paintings. He didn't finish many paintings at all. And it was
Wow.
because he was always, I mean, I don't know who wrote Walter Isaacson wrote his biography. It's a really good book. But he was like, he never felt like something was good enough to be finished. He had a really big problem with accepting that it could be done.
Hmm.
And sometimes you really just need that deadline to be like, I know it's not perfect, but it needs to be put out there and I need to move on.
It's interesting how there's some like very influential creative types and artists that have either made a lot of works over the span of many, many decades, or they've just made one or a few works that have become so influential that continue on. Like for
Yeah.
example, like F. Scott Fitzgerald is an example of that. Like he only published 3 or 4 novels. He died in his early 40s, but yet his works still, they're still part. The Great Gatsby is the great American novel. All these classics of literature that are still popular to this day.
Yeah. And to kind of bring the conversation back around to the topic is that has been the open-endedness of the pandemic has been probably the hardest part for me of just in the back of your head you're like, I don't know how much I can plan into the future because
Hmm.
I don't know when I can have like a normal life. I think that has been the thing that has, like I said, like the creativity part of my life, maybe I've been more prolific, but the thing that has permeated everything is this sense of like, I don't know, like I don't I'm only going to do plan this week.
Yeah,
Everything's so short term.
it's true, and like we're trying to set deadlines for ourselves, but there's no deadline in this pandemic. It's so uncertain, and we're still trying to like work within the confines of that, even though it's chaotic in many ways. That's why I
Yeah.
like the media projects, like the short film and the documentary that I'm going to make. That's why I'm trying to be very practical about. Like I'm in my hometown now. I might as well take advantage of that and make these projects that I can, because if I tried to do like say a short film in the city, that might be a lot more difficult because of just because of the situation that we're in. So it's really just about modifying my expectations to the point where like, okay, this is what it is. I can do this in this way, and now I just gotta do it.
Yeah, I was just looking something up. Sorry, I wasn't listening too well because what we said reminded me of something.
Yeah.
There's this book, The Lean Startup, which is all about um, creating ventures and entrepreneurship in the modern day. Like a
Mm.
lean, it's almost become a colloquial term, but just being able to pivot very quickly and respond to change. Sandra was kind of talking about it last week when she was talking about. There's another word she used, not lean, but agile. Very
Agile.
similar. And his definition of an entrepreneur is, or an entrepreneurship is, no, a startup, sorry. A startup is a human institution designed to create a new product or service under conditions of extreme uncertainty. And that's how we're all operating right now. We're all just being like, you have to make a decision at a certain point. That's what I've had to do with traveling to the US for my sister's wedding. It's like, you're never going to know all the facts during this pandemic. Um, and it's really forced a lot of people, myself included, to be like, okay, well, I'm 90% sure that's the best I can do. And so I might get burned, but I have to make a decision. And
Mm.
I think that's been a really good growing part of this. Like it's been a bit of a silver lining. It's made people be like, yeah, there's a lot of things in life that aren't certain, but you still have to make a decision. Like you got to do something. It's like what you were saying. It's like what you were saying with pursuing your filmmaking. Um, like you're never gonna have the perfect situation. You're never gonna have like the film crew that you've dreamed of to start. You gotta start putting the pieces together.
No, exactly. Even if it's like just 3 or 4 people, that's how it starts. And like you said, there's never 100% sure thing. Even if there was no pandemic and it was
Yeah,
sunshine every day and there were doves singing in the
yeah,
air like a Disney movie, like nothing ever goes perfectly. And you always have to accept that. One thing I noticed like among some people, even I was listening to Kevin Smith. I don't know, I was listening to a whole bunch of Kevin Smith and other types of indie filmmakers from the 90s on YouTube over the past week was just how like and that's one thing we're talking about this idea of authenticity before. It's just like how some people don't always want to work on a sure thing. Or no, they don't always want to work on something because they're not sure or they know it will not be a sure thing.
mm,
But that's the point of creating. You don't know if something's going to be a sure thing, but it's valuable to even at least work on something because at that point something will be made. And
yeah,
like it's so worth it. That's why I always want to do all different kinds of things. But I see some people are really like other types of filmmakers and some other creative types, like they're passionate about, but they're apprehensive, or maybe they think working on like say like a no budget indie film is like a short film is beneath them in some way, which is
yeah. But
ironic and
look at some
strange.
of the best film, most influential films. They were no low budget.
Well, yeah,
This is literally, I was
exactly.
literally having a conversation about this yesterday. It's like people want the fruits of experimentation without the risk and the grit and everything else. This was in reference to trying new stuff out on your YouTube channel and being a little afraid to like make a change and that you'll alienate some people. It's like, well, if you look at your favorite creator now, um, what they the person they are right now and the stuff they make is a product of trying stuff out and pissing people off.
Yep.
You just got to do it. Like,
And not getting that praise right away.
yeah,
There how many great artists and creators all throughout our history started off and like just not known or not appreciated for their works until well after the fact. Like we see this all the time. So it's like you said, they want the fruits of success and praise, but not the uncertainty and the hard work that needs to go into it.
yeah,
Like that's why I love about 1990s films is that there were these low budget movies made with a few people about the most like obscure things you could ever imagine. Like take Kevin Smith's film Clerks, for example, that came out in 1994. It's about just how clerks function. We're living in the mid 1990s,
yeah,
and it's just about like how it's finding the extraordinary and the complete ordinariness of life and being able to make something really compelling about that. He maxed out like 12 credit cards so he can get that film made. Like
what is,
six.
sorry, that's a film jargon I don't know. Max out 12 credit cards.
No, he
Oh,
literally maxed out
sorry. I
12
thought you
credit cards, or
man,
like, or
sorry.
not 12 credit cards, but he maxed out some credit
I
cards.
thought you meant like credits at the end of the movie. I was like, what is a credit
No,
card?
no, no.
Okay, sorry. That's when you just
There's the title of the episode. What is a credit card?
what is a credit card?
No, no,
More
but like he actually, maybe not 12 credit cards. Maybe that's I misheard it. But like he maxed out like so many credit cards so he could get his film financed. And
yeah.
now that little indie movie that he made for so many thousands of dollars just got inducted into the Library of Congress for being socially and culturally like of aesthetic value. That's
Wow.
incredible. That's amazing. That's a guy
Yeah.
from New Jersey who just said, "I just wanted to make stuff because I wanted to see things that I wanted to see."
Hmm.
And that's incredible. That's inspiring to hear, and that's inspiring to see. So we need more of that. And I feel like some people now, because now I think it's probably like a some of the fallout from social media and living such a world where we're all having eyes on each other like all of the time is that maybe some people don't want the negative feedback or the mean Facebook comment or YouTube comment that could maybe like I think, but it's so worth it just to do something because once it's made, it's there, it's real, it's tangible.
Yeah, for sure.
You've said something. Sorry, I
We
don't
don't
mean to be all like emotional about it, but
No, that's good. We don't need influencers have their place, but we don't need a every artist to be an influencer and do
no,
the same thing that everyone else is doing.
exactly, no, and just yeah, you just gotta do what you love.
Yeah,
That's really what it's all about, and do it, you know, do it in a way that's true and authentic to who you are. That's all you can be, and that's what you should be.
for sure.
Thank you for
Well,
my TED talk. No,
well, I was saying, I think that's a perfect spot to transition to what we're putting in the spotlight because, like, I think that sums it up.
there we go.
All right. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure, I can go first. So I decided what I'm gonna be putting to my spotlight for this week. So as some of you know, I made a documentary about content creators called Creators and New Storytellers last year that featured Mr. Morley Kert and a few other interesting, creative types from YouTube, and how they're able to authentically express themselves through YouTube and what it means for them, and how they're able to broadcast their crafts in a way that's never been done before. So I did a lot of research as I was making this documentary, and I found this really great book called Videocracy: How YouTube is Changing the World with Double Rainbows, Singing Foxes, and Other Trends That We Can't Stop Watching. It's a
That's great.
phenomenal examination. Isn't that a great title?
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal examination of how important a platform like YouTube is. There's never been a platform in human history where anyone else from anywhere in the world can upload video content of themselves or whatever that they're doing on, they can share it with the world in a way that's so diverse and dynamic. Like, for example, yeah, he has this really great line in the book where he says, "If aliens came to Earth, if they wanted to understand Earth, we would give them Google. If we wanted them to understand us, people, our culture, and what we do, we would give them YouTube."
Hmm.
It's a phenomenal examination of that, and how, like, even how it's created new trends and new different types of movements and genres, like the maker community, gaming communities, just music and musicians being able to give them like a new platform to show off the works and even make music videos that can be shared with anyone. It's a great book that really examines just how important online video is, and we're even seeing that even more now with like Instagram videos, TikTok, this little platform you may have heard about in the news.
Yeah.
It's
Never heard of it.
never heard of it. But so no, it's wonderful. It's a great book. It's by Kevin Alaka, and if you really want to learn more about how video is shaping the future of how online video is shaping the future of our culture in so many different types of ways, because it's a grassroots culture, and that's something that it's not top down, it's grassroots. So yeah, check
Okay.
it out. It's a great book.
It reminds me of do you know the YouTube channel All Gas No Breaks?
That sounds like the best YouTube channel name ever, but
Great
no.
name, right? So it's this guy who does these like ridiculous, what gonzo journalism is, like on the ground. It's kind of like Vice, going to the Area 51 raid, or the adult video awards in Vegas. He goes to all these like ridiculous places and just like interviews people.
Oh,
And it
interesting.
started out as it's a comedy channel, like, but they're real people. He's
Okay.
interviewing real people who are just total characters. He has one where he just goes on the streets of Vegas for a night. This isn't what I'm putting in the spotlight, by the way. It just reminded me. Um, but he just came out with one on the Portland protests, like the racial justice protests that have been
Yep.
going on for a while.
Yep.
And it was a bit of a change of tone. Like, it's still some people that were like, some of them were like sounded they were sounding silly because they were saying, like, they were so like amped up and in the moment, but it's raw and it's like super unfiltered and it's real, and it's not what the mainstream media is doing by any means, because it's so like, I mean, you can't swear on cable TV, and in real life people swear, and
All the time.
people are passionate. um
I
and
found like, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's just like I find that their investigative journalism or their documentary style journalism is really interesting. Like
yeah,
there was those skinhead or white supremacist was a rally or riots a couple years ago in Carolina. Which one was it?
yeah,
North Carolina or something? Charleston, I think. And yeah, it was really like they examined this and they show like, and how he's able to expose things in which maybe more mainstream outlets don't really do as much as they used to.
yeah. It's like, because they're fitting their news into such a mold that it's not really as authentic as reality. Like, it's not really showing what's really happening
Yeah,
in the
it's not
same.
as much as like on the ground.
Yeah, that's it. But like, that's so what reminded me of that is you saying in this book how if aliens want to see what humanity is like, they'll look at YouTube, because it's not so polished, it's raw, it's showing all the facets of humanity.
Yeah, well, that's it. And it's not perfect production values, but it's real.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. Okay, so
So, what's your spotlight for this week?
I want to put a spotlight on Alli Royce Soble.
Hmm.
She's an artist and photographer, and we actually have two of her pieces on our wall.
Damn.
She does really, really cool work. Um, it's always hard to describe more abstract art in words, but she uses color in conjunction with sketches in a really interesting way, where you might like, we have this piece on the wall which is like a cloud of color, and there's like kind of one, it's like a blot, but there's all these fine lines within it, and you just stare at it and all these visualizations come to mind, but it doesn't need to look like anything. um, it's really beautiful art, and maybe like in our story when we post this, I'll share some of her work, because it is, it will speak better for itself than I can for it. But she does really amazing work. You can find her on Instagram as Royce Takes Pics. So that has some of her photography and her paintings, as well as Royce Soblevitz. I'm not going to spell it out. I will link it in the show notes.
That sounds amazing. What? Where is she from?
She is, I don't know where she's from, but she's in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. Cool.
She's actually Eden's cousin.
Huh.
Yeah. But she was doing something really cool during the pandemic, where she was basically like every day posting some of her smaller pieces, and is like, if you want this, first person to comment gets it for this price.
Oh
And
no way.
it was amazing. That's how we got one of her pieces. And it's like, they were much more affordable than her more like traditionally marketed art. And it was a great way to get like a beautiful piece. And it was like, that's an amazing thing about living in 2020. It's like, you don't necessarily need to set up a Shopify account and do all these things. You can post a picture on Instagram saying, this is the price, first person to comment gets it.
That's true, and I've seen a lot more like ads by artists on Instagram, for example, selling their works in that way. I'm like, oh, neat.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's like watercolor painters or landscape or whatever else.
Yeah. So go check her stuff out. It's really beautiful. I really like it.
Sounds good. Now I need one of those things.
Yeah.
I need one of her works.
Yes. All right. Well, that was a great conversation. I really
That was
enjoyed
a,
that.
yeah, it was a phenomenal conversation. I feel like I just laid a part of my soul out there.
Well, that's good. Like we were saying, if you're authentic, it's all you can be.
And that's all you should be.
Well, thank you so much for listening this week. If you want to follow us, you can find us on, just going through all my tabs here. Oh my gosh. You can find us on Instagram at Into the Spotlight Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Into_Spotlight. You can find me at Morley Kert everywhere. And you can find Ryan. Ryan, where can people find you?
People can find me on Instagram at Rye O'Connor. That is ry.oconnor on Instagram, and on Twitter at Ryan O'Connor08.
Yes. And if you enjoy the show, tell your friends. I think that's the best way of getting the word of a podcast out there. Someone who you know likes cool stuff, they tell you about this cool thing they found.
Yep.
And if you really like it, leave a review.
Leave a review, and you know what? If there's anyone listening out there, feel free to reach out to us if you have a question, or if you'd like to be on the show, or even if there's like a topic you would like us to examine. Please reach out to us. This is a show for you, the listener, the creator who is just starting out on the creative journey. So reach out to us. We love to hear from our audience.
Yeah, any of those social medias will work well. I'm going to try to get the Twitter a little more active, and yeah, we want to engage with you. So again, thanks so much for listening, and have a great day.
Thanks so much, guys. Talk to you soon, Morley.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.